Oh, thank you very much. We have a lot of reason to have doom and gloom in this country right now, worldwide. We've got sluggish economy in this country, recession in other parts of the world, global warming, terrorism, wars in Ukraine, Afghanistan, and so on. The latest Wall Street Journal, New York, NBC poll showed that 60% of Americans think the country's in decline, and 76% think that their children will not live as good a life as they have. That's an all-time high. Now, I don't like to give predictions because they're evidence of my fallibility, but I feel confident about this one. The last 75 years of this century will give us unprecedented peace and prosperity because of basically the growth in democracy, the new respect for the rule of law, and the explosion in technology. Start off with democracy. A fundamental postulate of democracy is that the people on the whole are smarter than any benevolent dictator. The economist calls the wisdom of crowds. That is, the crowd or the group is smarter than the smartest person in the group. Remember the TV show Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? You could ask the expert if you wanted a lifeline, some help, and they were right less than 2/3 of the time. The audience was right over 90% of the time. There was a 19th century polymath, Sir Francis Melton. He went to a country fair in 1905, I think it was, and there was an ox, a live ox, and people were supposed to guess how much would it weigh dressed and slaughtered. 800 people gave the guess. They gave their different guesses. 800 people just walking by the fair. They were within 1% of the actual weight. They were correct. They were smarter than any one expert. The CIA and the other agencies of the government are having crowdsourcing to try to predict the future. How many states will report West Nile virus, at least one case, by August 1st of last month? Well, the crowd guessed between 10 and 12, and the answer, 11. That's really pretty good. We are at the democracies at the top of the food chain. Now, I'll grant you it doesn't seem that way now. Russia is moving to dictatorship. Turkey's got all these journalists imprisoned and maybe moving the same direction. Of course, Iran, North Korea, and so on. But like good investors, we should be looking at the long term, not the short term. In 1974, there were 30 democracies in the world, about less than a third, but less than 30% actually. In 2013, a lot more countries, thanks to the breakup of the Soviet Union, and over 60% of them were democracies, 120 countries. This is very important. In modern times, no democracy has ever gone to war against another. Democracy leads to peace, and peace is necessary for prosperity. The second big dramatic change, I think, is in the rule of law. Now, we've always had law, as long as we have civilization. Caesar and the Roman Empire had law, except that the law was different for Caesar than for the rest of us. The book of Deuteronomy says that even the king is under the law, but that took a while for that to catch on. But now it has. Watergate was proof of that in this country. What we find now is that the EU, the European Union, requires its member states to have an independent judiciary before they go into the Union. Ukraine is trying to get in. Other countries are clamoring to get in. The Soviet Union has disappeared, and Russia and China now have private stock markets. China, which pretends to be communist, has a private stock market. They're trading and becoming more prosperous. Mutual trade leads to mutual interdependence, and mutual interdependence leads to peace. The commerce needs rules of law to flourish, and that's what the world is now giving us. That China is aggressively prosecuting corruption. Countries realize you can't have a prosperous middle class if crony capitalists and oligarchs run the country. China is fighting that. China has been growing at double-digit or high single-digit rates for years. Russia, which has a more educated citizenry and tremendous natural resources, particularly the oil, there's a very sluggish economy. Russia embraces is run by the oligarchs, and China is trying to reduce the corruption. The World Trade Organization brags on its webpage that we settle disputes by applying the rule of law, and all these countries are trying to get into the World Trade Organization. the arc of history tends towards the rule of law. I mean, it's not a straight line. I mean, the arc will bend. I mean, it's an arc, right? They bend, but it will not break. We're moving more and more towards the rule of law. Now there's technology. And we really can't appreciate the dramatic differences. In 1843, the Patent Commissioner reported to Congress that we're pretty much near the end of improvement. You know, and there was, make sure we close down the patent office, save some time, right? And then the 1907 Nobel Prize winner in physics said, we've pretty much discovered all the physical laws. What we have now is like more careful measurements. Then we had what? Particle physics. I mean, they were just so wrong. Those were the experts, not the crowd. There's a picture of a younger me next to a 1964 Rolls Royce. The Rolls Royce still looks great. Me, not so much. But if cars improved as fast as computers since World War II, a Rolls Royce would travel at the speed of light and cost a dime. It's just hard to believe. From Alexander the Great to the 18th century, when we started having trains, the fastest man traveled was the speed of horse for thousands and thousands of years. Now we measure distance in time, not miles. How far is it from LA to New York? People don't know it's 2,500 miles. They know it's less than 6 hours by air. We routinely, when somebody says, how far away is Disneyland? In rush hour or not? Everything is in hours and minutes. Space Camp was a movie, came out in 1986. It's a real place. My daughter graduated from Space Camp around 1986, and an astronaut spoke at the commencement. He told us that his grandmother, as a little baby, came to California in covered wagon. She lived long enough to see her grandson fly to the moon. One lifetime. What will your grandchildren see in one lifetime? We see the number 11. Little children, they see the symbol for pause. The technology has synergies we just can't imagine. Take, for example, you create the TV, and then you create airplanes. What grew out of that? It's not the first thought in your mind, but it's the multi-billion-dollar sports industry. Because now sports teams can travel around the country, and their fans at home can watch them in real time. I don't do much sports. Somebody said it's one of my few good qualities. But I do know, since I'm interested in finance, that when the Lakers or something just sold for $1 billion, one sports team sold for $1 billion. Couldn't happen without TV and airplanes. The internet, there are 54 million singles in the United States. Over 3/4 of them have tried online dating. It's a $1 billion industry. Turns out, though, some things never change. That is, men on the internet, as in real life, often lie about their age, their weight, and their wealth. There is one difference. On the internet, you can lie about your height. And in a bar, that's harder to do when you're standing up. The dramatic growth in the internet, 2 billion people a couple years ago, 5 billion in the year 2020. That's just dramatic. A huge percentage of the world will have access to internet. You think our internet is fast? Go to Europe. Go to Estonia, which is nicknamed Estonia. Go to South Korea, much faster than ours. We have a lot to improve. Technology will set us free. In the old science fiction novels of the 1950s, a typical theme was, we're all in drab clothes. I don't like drab. And the government controls us by technology. The USSR put photocopy machines behind locked doors because they were scared of the technology. Now, any blogger has access to millions of people. Each one can create their own newspaper. Any anonymous protester can get on Facebook and Twitter and tell all the other protesters where they should be going for the next demonstration. The dictators can't control that, particularly when it's billions having access to the internet. Now, technology is also going to help the poor. America's poor, actually 95% have internet access, refrigerator, and TV. I mean, even Caesar didn't have that. The world's poor, they're in a lot worse space. When we talk about abject or absolute poverty, minimum standards of health, shelter, literacy and so on. If you live in a mud hut and you can't read, you live in absolute poverty. In the last 50 years, absolute poverty has dropped 50%. By 2035, it will be 0. I mean, that's tremendous progress. And all these people will become more prosperous, which makes other people more prosperous. iPhones, when they first appeared in June of 2007, thermal detection devices cost $10,000. They're very helpful, essential to finding people in smoke-filled rooms. Most fire departments couldn't afford them because they're $10,000. Now they're a $150 add-on to the iPhone or to a Samsung, any of the smartphones, a $150 add-on. This iPhone here has more computing power than all the world's computers in 1945. And all we know is that 5 years from now, it's going to cost less and do even better. We're worried about global warming. There's a utility in Mississippi that's about to open up. It converts coal into a gas, stripping out all the pollutants, including carbon dioxide, which we're all exhaling now. We have 500 years of coal energy in this country. If we can make it clean and use it, that not only helps us, but all the money that goes into the terrorists and the dictators, every dollar we spend here is a dollar they don't have. This is Alec Balzuk. He's quadriplegic. Got in an auto accident several years ago. First, let's think about eyeglasses, right? In the Middle Ages, if you had 20/50 vision, 20/100, you were effectively blind. Your job was begging. This little technology changed the lives of tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people. There were fewer then because of the Black Death, but it changed their lives. Now, why is she smiling, the quadriplegic? She's got Google Glasses. She can download emails from the internet and read them, compose her own and send them to her friends, take photos, send them to her friends, post them on social media. She can ask for directions, cruise the internet. She's now back in law school. Technology. It will over time, will make the lame walk and the blind see. The middle class is dramatically growing in the world. We had less than 2 billion in 2009. We're going to have nearly 60% of the world will be middle class. There's already 300 million middle class in Africa, and most of the growth is going to be in the poorest areas of the world. Sir Francis Bacon said that the three inventions that changed the 17th century were the compass, gunpowder, and the printing press. Now we have the rule of law, the expansion of democracy, and free trade and explosion in technology. I promise you this. The 21st century did not start out right, but it's going to end fantastic. The 20th century gave us World War I, the Great Depression, World War II, the Cold War. The future is going to see unprecedented technology and prosperity, not just for us, but for the poorest of the poor. Thank you.